Welcome to Decades of Horror, the classic era.
Help me, please! Help me! No, go away! No! What? Please help me! Please go away! Go away! No!
Gruesome Magazine.
I'm
This is episode
never gonna make it
100.
easy on you.
33, recorded August 30th, 2022. Yeah, you were, but I... Anyway, the last sound effect was the piece de resistance.
I'm pretty sure that's what it sounded like when his little fly abdomen burst open.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Little fly guts went everywhere.
My name is Jeff Mohr. On this podcast, we cover the good and bad, maybe the even ugly horror films released since the beginning of time through 1969. In each episode, we'll discuss some monsters, spirits, psychos, and villains that have haunted movie-going audiences since the dawn of film history. Decades of Horror, the classic era, is partnering with Play Now Media on 3 of their streaming channels: the Classic Sci-Fi Movie Channel, the Classic Horror Movie Channel, and the Wicked Horror TV Channel. Each of those channels now includes episodes of Decades of Horror, the classic era. So check those out. They're available on most all OTT platforms. I watch it on my Fire Stick. Y'all can watch it on your computer or your Apple TV or your whatever. Do it.
Whatever you got.
And they didn't have this film on there, but they had the 2 sequels. The first 2 sequels are on there. So we'll maybe talk about that later. So with me this week are my incredible co-ghosts. Who are you guys? First up is Whitney Collazo, an accomplished artist, makeup artist, and writer. Whitney, how are you?
Just a fly on the wall. I'm all right. I'm all right. How's everybody?
I'm good. I'm good. Next up is Chad Hunt, co-host of Decades of Horror, the 1970s and 1980s, a film producer, director with Wreak Havoc Productions, and a comic book artist and writer. Chad, how you doing?
Pretty fly for a indigenous guy.
Love it.
Super fly. Yeah, you were doing some Wreak Havoc stuff this weekend, right?
Yeah. We shot 2 back-to-back shorts over the weekend, and luckily we were able to do both of them in the same location, and it was just great. It was tiring, but it's great, and they're going to be really, really good, I think.
Cool.
Yay.
Awesome.
Keep an eye out for that. Are you targeting? You're not targeting that. You won't have those ready for the film festival, right?
Hopefully we'll have one, maybe a rough cut ready for the film festival.
Okay.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And when is Wreak Havoc Film Festival?
It's gonna be the last weekend in September. I think it's September 30th and October 1st. I think is a Friday and a Saturday.
Okay, and that's in Greensboro, right?
It's going to be in Winston-Salem, North Carolina,
Winston-Salem.
at the Marketplace Cinemas in Winston-Salem. Yeah,
Excellent. Also with us is Daphne, who is awesome, stupendous, and likable as hell. And I was
that's debatable.
It is.
I still haven't made up my mind.
How you doing, Daphne?
Daphne?
I'm doing good. I'm willing to go the long haul. I can wait.
All right.
Yeah, the problem is you never know when it ends. All right.
I'm just joking. We love you dearly, Daphne, and it's so good to have you on the podcast.
Thanks, Fly Guy. Thanks, Thad or Tad.
Fly guy.
Fed. I got called all kinds of different names over the weekend.
I saw him talking to Tad a little while ago. So, all right. So on this podcast, we start off by giving a few details about the film. We go through some taglines and some posters and stuff, first impressions, and then we just kind of take off down the road and talk about what tripped us, what tripped our trigger in this particular film. And we are a spoiler podcast. This movie is 64 years old. So, hey, go watch it if you haven't, because we're going to spoil it. But I have a feeling that, it's not going to be a problem. So let's get to our topic this week.
No,
It's The Fly from 1958, the original one. I'm almost always partial to original films, I think. Probably because I saw them as a child. Directed by Kurt Newman, written by James Clavell. Interesting.
James Clavell?
The James Clavell.
Okay,
yes.
I didn't know if I thought maybe I was remembering his name wrong or something.
Yeah, the James Clavell of Shogun.
Mhm.
wow.
And Noble House.
Richard Chamberlain.
Richard Chamberlain, yeah. Based on a short story by George Langelaan. Cast includes Vincent Price, Patricia Owens, David Henderson, Herbert Marshall, Charles Herbert, and I didn't put her on there, but Kathleen Freeman is their housemaid. She's a very recognizable character. Production company is 20th Century Fox. It was filmed in Montreal, Quebec, Canada. Also at 20th Century Fox Studios in LA. They started filming March 17th. According to David Henderson, it was filmed there was 18 shooting days, so a little over 3 weeks. Release date, July 16th, 1958. Synopsis. A scientist has a horrific accident when he tries to use his newly invented teleportation device.
So horrific.
Yeah. And the gentleman in the picture.
As evidenced by the man in the picture here.
Yes. Well, this is Gaston who finds said scientist feeling a little peaked.
Yeah.
Or something. Okay.
I'm not cleaning that up.
Really, and everybody comes to watch. So next up is our favorite segment. It's Taglines with Chad.
I love this.
Jeff must have been recording himself.
I've been doing that all day.
Now, is that supposed to be a fly or a fart?
Well, if it's Jeff,
I
if
did
it's
not.
Jeff, we're talking gas. If it's,
I was not the source of the sound.
That's funny.
Okay,
Oh
so
my
taglines.
leave the curtain open. Okay.
You can skip that one if you want.
I'm not reading that.
Well,
I'll
I
read
tried
that.
to translate one. There was a big long tagline on the Swedish poster, so I tried to translate it, and it just ain't right. Something's wrong.
Well, I'll read the English part of it because I can't
That's good.
let that. We can't let this one slide. Screaming horror, devilish gas hugger, reckless pressing. You've never seen anything like it.
I think the only thing I could figure is the reckless pressing had to do with the machine and the machine shop, but it took some time to get to that because originally it said reckless pushing.
Now you go walking around screaming devilish gas hugger and you've got a panic on your hands on the 4th of July.
I pulled that word apart. One of the words was hugging, and I'm like, I don't know. I'm just not getting. Our hugging goes with devilish. I don't know.
Devilish
so something's
gas
not right.
hugger.
Something's not right.
Something's
in the
definitely not
translation.
right. No.
So now to the English tagline.
Even though that'd make a good band name, devilish gas.
Oh, I love
huggers.
it.
Yeah,
I like
it
that.
would.
Yeah.
Yeah. If she looked upon the horror her husband had become, she would scream for the rest of her life. She would have done that anyway. I have.
almost the rest of the movie, but
Yeah. Horror of the Winged Menace. There were no wings. There were no wings. There was an arm and a head. That was it. No wings.
yeah, the Winged Menace wasn't. Anyway,
Yeah.
a
She had
fly.
to kill the thing her husband had become, but could she?
Yeah.
No.
it's
Tune in-
answered by the end of the movie. Yeah.
Tune in and find out. Once it was human, even as you and I. I'm trying to make these sound scary,
Yeah,
but I don't think
you were once human too, aren't you?
once. I can pretty much pinpoint the exact moment that I did not.
Changed over.
Yeah, when I changed over. Okay, and it wasn't too long ago. All right. The monster created by Adams gone wild. That's Adam with ATOMS, not ADAMS.
Yeah. Well,
It challenged the supreme power of the universe. Did it though?
Did it?
Did it?
they're
He
just-
pretty much stayed in his basement the whole time. Okay. The first time atomic mutation on humans has been shown on the screen. That is just bull crap.
That's what I thought.
I can think of 100 other movies where some anyway. The fly with the head of a man and the man with the head of a fly meet Gaston.
Yeah.
All right. For your own good, we urge you not to see it alone. I think you'll be okay.
I guess that last one's a duplicate. Okay.
Yeah, I'm not going to read that. Another fly with the head of a man and the man with the head of the fly.
Yeah, but with capital letters.
Oh,
Yeah.
mhm.
Okay. So let's take a look at the posters. And like I usually do, I get just a little bit carried away. This is the one that I see the most. I don't know if it's like on the Scream Factory Blu-ray. It's on the IMDb.
I love how she's screaming through it, like looks like a screen door to keep the fly out in the first place.
Yeah. So not particularly colorful, but it's gets the point across and doesn't. So one of the things I want to talk about is in listening to some of the commentaries, they were trying to get this out without giving away exactly what was going on. I mean, obviously the title's The Fly, but but then some of them kind of start to give them away.
Ooh.
But here's where we switch to the
Who's that at the top?
damsel in distress who appears in every other poster, and I didn't see this woman anywhere in the movie.
Mm-mm.
Even like I have this movie on iTunes, and the little title card they got for it has a different. There's no fly. There's nothing. There's just
Right.
like a
Right.
half-dressed woman laying in a shadow, just like this. But I don't know.
There is a scene where she's like collapses on the floor in the lab with
Yeah,
her
but she wasn't wearing that.
nightgown and robe, but she wasn't wearing that. No,
Yes.
and her hair is not. She wasn't a brunette.
They must have
So
really
here-
liked damsels in distress back then.
So here's another thing that they did. So this one has the fly in the middle of it. So now the next one is almost
Okay.
the exact identical poster with
Yeah.
the claw. And he's doing his Dr. Strangelove impression. Get that hand down. Then here's another one where the exact same poster, only with a claw and a fly, and it's just a little bit something about the positioning of these things. It's just a little lewd.
What's
The
a
claw
different
looks
girl?
like the claw one looks like it's reminded me of King Kong and Fay Ray when he's kind of
I can see that.
don't like where it's coming.
Let's paint the next one orange or red, so they
And-
don't think it's the same girl.
A giant they all have like a giant fly on it in reference to the people. Okay, so a couple more. There's one with the cloth over his head. Like, we don't show the fly head, but we pretty much can figure that out. Right?
I like the bottom one.
Yeah, that one's
The
a
design of it.
little more artistic. Now we'll go to,
Oh my
I
God.
believe it's Spanish. I'm not sure if it's
Yeah.
Mexican or not. I think it's Mexican.
Does that fly have a bottom jaw?
That's fine.
With teeth. I didn't notice that. That's great.
Oh my gosh, I see it. Yeah, it's fly.
And a different
Oops.
girl. A different girl on every poster, boys.
Yeah. So this is the
She's got
The
too many
Swedish
clothes
one.
on. And the fly should be choking her.
but I had to put this one up because look at that fly. It's got like a cartoon face on it.
Yeah.
I'm like, what?
Flugen.
Let's see. I think that's the last one. Did I go past the German one? Oh well. Der Fliegel.
I assumed that was German.
This one is Swedish, and it's got that
Oh, whoops, my
It's
bad.
got
that
Swedish,
tagline on there under the red letters.
I
Anyway,
think in German it was called Maggot Dad.
probably.
Oh.
Hope Daphne's not having trouble here. Let's get to first impressions, and this is my pick, and I am not going to like go on and on forever about this, I hope. But I love this movie. I've watched this far more times than I've watched the Cronenberg version. I love the Cronenberg version, but this is one of those ones. I was telling Whitney before the show that I was watching, they had the 4:00 to 5:30 movie on after school on weekdays. And they would have a science fiction and a horror week and creatures week and stuff like that. And this is one of those ones I saw on that. There's a long list of those movies that I have certain scenes, indelibly printed in my memory that include The Tingler and Invasion of the Body Snatchers and 20 Million Miles to Earth. And I'll stop there rather than just keep going on. But this is one of them. And Black Scorpion's another one. Those were movies I loved. And I couldn't wait. I knew they were going to be on. Every time they had the particular topic week, it was always on. So I absolutely love this. It's got several scenes in it that were stuck in my memory that I'm sure we'll talk about later. And I love the way it's played out. The way the story is played. I mean, we don't get to see much of anything for we don't even see David Henderson for the first half hour of the movie.
Mm-hmm.
Andre. So, and it's got pretty cool effects compared to later on ones. I kind of like them. So I'm just going to stop there, and I'll let Chad go next. Chad, what were your impressions of this movie?
I first saw this movie. I think it was TBS. I think it was Dog Poop Week, and they played all fly movies.
There's 5 of them.
So anyway, I was looking for dog poop in all the movies and couldn't find any. So I was extremely disappointed in all 5 films. But
I can understand that.
I'm sorry, I gotta.
It's okay to laugh. Poop is funny. Back to the movie.
I can't.
I can't remember. I did see it on TV as a kid, And I thought it was just a fantastic horror film. I really, really was horrified when it was almost like Phantom of the Opera when she pulled the hood from his face, and the movements that David Hedison was doing, the little jerky head movements and the little things coming out of his mouth that were moving around. It just looked creepy and nasty. And but it had a good story. I loved the way the narrative worked, where it sort of started out with the end first and worked its way backwards to what happened. And I just found that extremely interesting too. And overall, it's a great sci-fi horror movie. And yeah, matter transmitters and stuff like that may be out of the realm of possibility now still, but it felt more real than a lot of the sci-fi horror movies of the 50s and 60s and stuff, where it was just stupid science. It wasn't really I forget what Joseph Perry calls it, but just crazy science. And it felt more grounded, and it felt more realistic, and that's really what made it so horrible to me, and horrifying. Was it seemed real, and that's mainly because of the characters in there. They're all acted very well and played very well, and so yeah, this is a classic. And yeah, and I enjoy it very much. I still enjoy it a lot to this day. So.
Okay, Whitney, how about you?
I believe
first memories of seeing this.
Some of the first memories I've had was like around Halloween time, when I'm like in first or second grade, something like that. And I know it was Halloween because I remembered some of the TV lineup or something. They were saying like Vincent Price movies were coming on that night. And I'm like, well, I want to be back in time at my grandma's to watch that, or whatever the movies were. I don't know. And then we realized that The Fly was on, and I'll admit that this one really freaked me out. I mean, when you're a kid, when you're small and you're watching this with your Halloween candy in your hand, you're happy, but then you're like, oh my God, I have fake spiders in my bag. I'm seeing this fake spider doing this thing with that one scene with the fly, everything, like, oh, help me. Oh my God, that was traumatizing as a kid, but I believe that was nightmare fuel for me. I'll never get that out of my head. And we'll talk about it more. But no, this is definitely an influential movie. And when I thought this was scary, later when I watched the Cronenberg movie, I'm like, okay, that was 10 times freakier for me. But this one was like one of the first things that gave me nightmares because of the whole playing with God, playing with science thing. And when you're a kid, your mind's everywhere. You're like, is this really possible? You don't even know, like, because especially on Halloween night, like you have all of these ideas of what's already out there on this night of horror or whatever. But no, it was a good time, but it's just freaky stuff as a kid. But I'd say it's kind of cool now.
Yeah. Thanks. And Daphne, how about you?
Well, I had only seen parts of it. This is my first time seeing it from beginning to end.
Cool.
I'd only seen the help me part. And, when you see little clips of things, and of course it's so iconic, the lines are so iconic, but I never actually sat down and watched it from the beginning. I totally forgot Vincent Price was in it. Duh. And, but it was fantastic. I fell in love with it in the first few minutes, mostly just because I love that Gaston, like when he opened his mouth to scream, the telephone started, I think, or something like that. Mm-hmm. I thought that was genius. And then just how gruesome this pressing thing was with all the blood and everything. Yes. I'm like, oh my God, what the hell? Someone got squished. And so that just got my attention from the beginning. And it was just so gruesome, some of the stuff going on there, like with the cat, doing the tests on the cat. I think I literally went like, and like, don't do it, you know. And so yeah, it was awesome. It was way better than I thought it would be. I knew it would be fun, but I didn't expect to actually like the story as much when I got down to the details. So yeah, it was great.
That's so cool. It's your first time seeing it.
I know.
Yeah, love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is I'm glad none of you gave me a hard time, because I had told everybody there was one of 3 movies I was going to pick, and then I picked this one, and this wasn't one of the 3. So I still have those, you know,
Back up.
I guess. Yeah, yeah. Anyway, God, I love this. I just really love this. So you mentioned Vincent Price, and I'm trying to decide how to start this. I think I'm going to start it with this, because this happens this is like the first scene of the movie.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Isn't it?
Yeah, that bottom one.
Yes,
Pretty
it
much.
is.
Well, I mean, first it starts with Gaston kind of talking to the cat or whatever, but this is when the stuff starts.
But
bottom
he hears
yeah.
the noise. Yeah,
Yep.
he doesn't know about the fly or Mrs.
Right.
Mm-mm.
Well, he sees her running
Yeah.
out.
Right.
Right. Mrs. Delambre. But he comes upon this press with a body hanging out one end,
Right.
and blood, bright red blood. That's some hammered blood.
Yeah.
It really is.
And I just love how it's so easy to imagine that press going down and just squashing a head good and hard, a head and a hand, you know?
Yeah.
And then when they go in details about how long it was and how much pressure there was and how I did it twice,
Ooh.
I was just like, oh.
It was set to 0 gap.
0.
Yeah. It's
They're
weird
so
because
awesome.
the note that he left her just said, "I just want to lay down for a nap for a minute."
She read between the lines. It was
Maybe,
pretty clear.
maybe.
But well,
I know my husband.
Oh my God.
we'll come back to this, but this is what actually this picture on the bottom is. I narrowed it down to get it a little, the blood a little more prominent. But Gaston's on the right side of that picture. You see the back of him as he's going, like in that my info picture. Anyway, Gaston, who was played by Torben Meyer, hardworking.
I just really loved that part with his gasp and then the phone. I just thought
It was a clever.
it was
little
just so clever.
thing.
Yeah. And you kind of had an idea like, oh my, what am I going to see here? What's going on? I thought it was great.
Without knowing it, they introduce you to the cat too. Like you get this black cat and you go, oh, you know, the Princess Delambre, or whatever that other cat's name was. Oh, she's busy with some other tomcat tonight or something, you know. Anyway. So this thing,
those kind of little things, people that aren't us or horror fans and stuff, they hear of The Fly and they think, oh, that's one of those cheap sci-fi, but it's not. This is such a step above any of that other the other stuff. The script is very sophisticated in how it's written and structured, and the acting is just impeccable. I mean, it's when it came to that time for him to get into that press, you should be crying because it was so just like Cronenberg's when Jeff Goldblum puts the shotgun, he grabs the shotgun that Gina Davis is holding, puts it to us. It's the same emotional impact. You just want to cry because it's such a tragedy. You know, for everyone involved, it's such a tragedy, and he didn't mean for that to happen. So it was out of his hands what happened. Isn't it? I don't know. It's just very emotionally moving to me. But I'll this Fly movie and the Cronenberg one as well.
Yeah, so good.
yeah, they are. So what did you think of this flashback structure? Anybody?
I liked it. I liked it, and I thought it kind of lent a little mystery to the beginning. Like, what, what
Mhm.
happened, and with her, but as well as her husband, and kind of establishing the police officer kind of in the beginning, and then so you can kind of understand how maybe he would react the way he was reacting towards the end. Yeah, I really liked it. It was really easy to follow. There was, it didn't mess with you too much as far as like keeping track of what the story was.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, they set it up perfectly because there was a reason for everything,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mhm.
I mean, there was a reason to put him in that press the way that she did, but we don't know that. All we know is she killed her husband,
Mm-hmm.
and she won't tell anybody why.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. There's a few things that she admits to when they press her on it. Like, well, the stroke count was at 2. So who did the other stroke? Okay, I did 2 strokes. Well, why did you do that? I can't tell you that either. Okay. So, and that was that. And I thought it was great. So you really didn't know what was going on other than she killed her husband and she wouldn't tell anybody. And so they're kind of trying to figure it out. The other thing that happened when you're watching this the second time, I don't know, for me, I'm not sure I noticed this. If I noticed it before, I didn't remember it. But that whole first half hour before we get the flashback, as she's telling the story, every time she's in a room, I swear, or even Francois, Vincent Price, you hear a buzzing. There's like you hear a fly, and she's obviously distracted. But then you even hear it when Gaston goes, or Francois goes into a room. You hear a fly buzzing, and you're like going, "What the?"
Well, I like how in the beginning first of all, she killed she killed him. I mean, pretty much, unless something crazy happened. I mean, she was there, she ran away, but I like that they mentioned that his head was smashed and his hand. And I remember thinking, oh, okay, they're just kind of going over the gruesome details. But then as it comes on, you're like, yes. And then she goes back and puts the claw under there, just with this, little continuity things like that I don't know how much they really matter in the telling of the story, but I appreciate them and adding a little bit to the realism of it. Just little things like that from the beginning.
So this was a fair amount of blood for an American movie of that time. I think. I don't know.
For an
Maybe you can think of
opening.
other ones. It's the same year that Horror of Dracula came out, so I don't know if that had an effect at all. Or if it was just
I was really surprised when I saw that right away.
Yeah, me too.
Right away.
I mean, you guys, one of you said it looks like hammer blood, and it's true. That was a lot for like so close to the opening, and that's seeing that much in the makeup already. Like that's an establishing section. That's an establishing shot in a way. So that's definitely a huge part. And like Daphne says, continuity when talking, when going into the details of the hand and the head. Yeah, there's a lot of reason to it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so you don't see, like maybe now you'd see like some kind of burst or skull crush and blood squirting out, but you imagine it. Her reaction as she pushes the button is just, and then you look at it and go, oh my God. So they start the movie with this, a horrifying, impressionable scene. And it's not like the rest of the movie is downhill. We come back around to that at the end and get even more. So they really.
Right. So it's like established when you start off that this happened. And then it's just kind of simmering back there in the back burner as it circles back around again at the end. Without feeling like, oh, well, I already know that this happened. It's more of like, oh my God, I know this happened. Now I'm going to find out like all the gruesome details of how this happened.
Yeah, and I'm thinking, it's a mystery because you're at least me. The first time I'm seeing it, I'm thinking, well, did he actually kill himself? And she's lying for some reason because she doesn't want that her son to think he committed suicide. Although you wouldn't want him to know her mother killed her, his father. So it's sort of a bit of a conundrum. All right. So here's our, and you know what? If I look back at those posters, I don't think Vincent Price is not the lead. Al Henderson or David, David Henderson was billed as Al Henderson at that time, and Patricia Owens are the top names, top billing.
Even if that's the case, this sort of cemented Vincent Price's role as a horror movie guy, more so than in any other movie he'd done to that point.
Yeah, I think the big one he did before this was House of Wax. But he immediately went on to do other stuff, and this was like, it's interesting how it just really took off.
I love when he plays good guys. He plays great villains, but I also love when he's a good guy in movies too.
Yeah,
he's very good.
You're so used to seeing him. Yeah. You're so used to seeing him, treeing up the scenery or being the villain and just doing that so good. And then you see this and you're like, oh, he's like you said, just a good guy, just a regular guy, earnest guy, honest guy. Maybe loves his brother's wife, but that doesn't make any difference, and
well, he gets that across without being creepy or implying maybe some motive or something.
Yeah, exactly.
I loved Herbert Marshall as Inspector Shira. He was, he was awesome. And I guess he had a artificial leg. I don't know if you noticed when he was walking. Well, once I knew he had it, then I started watching what he was doing. And I think they were trying to help him out in places because he did some walking, but there was a lot of scenes where they'd walk into a room and he would stop. And then the camera might follow Vincent Price, or Vincent Price is outside and we see Vincent Price walking and then he comes up, So I don't know if they were doing that, but he worked very hard to not look that way. He tried not to. If you looked at his legs, you could see it, but he tried very hard not to.
I wouldn't even have thought. Didn't get my attention at all.
Very distinguished. Very distinguished. Good actor. And his final line after they finally shows him the fly. Oh Lordy. You could tell he's in shock. What does he say? We were thinking about that as a quote. I'll remember that scream for the rest of my life or something like that. And he's like almost shaking or something.
As they struggle to figure out a lie to cover up for the crime that's been committed.
Yeah.
I love that. I love that.
What do we do now?
Yeah. But Vincent Francois points out to him, hey, guess what? You were arresting her for murder. You just committed murder.
Yeah.
She killed a man with a fly's head. You killed a fly with a man's head. The logic was impeccable.
If I have one problem with the movie, which I don't have too many problems with it, but it's these two at the bottom right here. They asked
they're watching.
Yeah, the little boy Philippe goes, I saw that fly again. He's out there in the web and the spider's about to get him. And then these two go running down there, and the find of the scientific discovery of who knows what, and these guys just stand there and watch it. Yeah, that's one big spider, okay. And just I think I would have picked him off of there or something. Put him in a matchbook box or something.
Well,
it was shocking enough watching it on TV or on a screen, let alone being there watching it. You might have been in shock.
Well, the reason I say it is David Henderson started to become more savage as the movie went on.
Mm-hmm.
And
Oh,
so I'm thinking, well, the Fly is probably becoming more aware of what he is by the end too. That's why he kept flying into the house. That's what I was thinking,
Mm-hmm.
because
Yeah.
once a fly gets out, you never see it again. But this fly kept finding its way back into the house somehow. So I was thinking, well, maybe he's becoming intelligent as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I would do my best to save him. I wouldn't just smash him with a rock.
what were you going to say, Whitney?
Oh, well, I wish I could say the same as Chad, but I've said before I'm not a fan of spiders, so I probably would have been in shock. Like, I don't know what to do with this situation or
the
what
spider,
I'm seeing.
Yeah, the spider can go to hell. Just save the fly.
But that spider was pretty gruesome, and the fact that it was the shots were taken kind of like from the perspective of the fly and all those eyeballs coming at you. It was just like
and just the fear of him looking at it, like that's Go ahead, Daphne, sorry.
Oh, I was just gonna say with the inspector, him doing a really good job. I was really struck when he had decided that he was going to recommend the guilty, that the mom was guilty, that the wife was guilty, and he was like, all I can imagine is murder or murder suicide, as he was walking out. And just the way he delivered that, it was like, well, I'm doing my job, it's so sad, but she did it, and I'm just gonna have to go do that. I just thought, I really believe that there was this, you have the good cop kind of thing in there, and I just thought he did a really good job of that.
Well, and all along he's laying the groundwork for he's not thinking she's insane. There's something she's playing up like she doesn't know her son and stuff like that, so yeah. Well, so finally 30 minutes into the movie we meet David Henderson, or Andre, and Patricia Owens, his wife Helene, and they are just the cutest couple. I thought they had pretty good chemistry, actually.
For a little while they were.
Yeah.
Then she just became the cute one in the relationship.
This is true. So so David Henderson, you guys, I'm gonna guess Daphne and Whitney haven't seen David Henderson much. Have you ever seen him before?
I
don't think so.
Chad?
I can't remember off the top of my head what I've seen him in before, but this was the first thing I ever saw him in. And I thought he made a really good hero or a leading man type in this. He felt he reminded me of Reed Richards from the Fantastic Four. He loves his wife dearly, but if something scientific comes along, it just takes his whole focus away, and he becomes absorbed in that. He did that really well, I thought. But he still came across as human, especially when the cat disappeared. He was horrified by what he did. And he had that humanity about him that I really liked.
Right. And his work was definitely part of his personality. Like even when they went to see the ballet, like you could see that he's scribbling some of the work down, like the mathematics. So little things like that, and seeing that playing a part of his personality.
And I thought he did a good job playing. I think it would be really hard to play a likable character who just wants to do good, who would so quickly, grab the house cat and stick him in the experiment, So, but you could really feel the pull of him, his mind, and these questions he was working on, this experiment, kind of fighting with his humanity, or whatever you want to say, kind of the abstract, and so it was like it was believable to me that he would. to have some trouble with that, but still end up doing it, you know? And I know that, you know, kind of like some people look at as pets differently, but it was clearly meant to be like, oh my gosh, you did this thing, you know what I mean? And it was pretty bad, but I believe that he would be definitely pulled towards that. And that part of his character took him up and made him do this, which has then made it more easy for me to believe that he would have gotten into it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I've always kind of felt like, well, you know, I kind of believe that these guys do the experiments on themselves. I can definitely see that happening, but I appreciate kind of seeing how one might get to that. And you kind of getting an idea of who this character is, or why they were thinking that they needed to do this, you know? So I thought I did a really good job of that.
Mm-hmm. I remember him he did a lot of TV. Used to see him in a lot of TV shows. I know he was in a couple of Bond pictures, James Bond.
Yeah, he played
movies,
the CIA character.
Felix,
Felix Leiter.
And but I was never too familiar with a lot that he did.
Okay, did you ever see Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea?
Yeah,
he was the captain.
Okay.
And then Richard Basehart was the admiral. It was like some super experimental submarine.
Mm-hmm.
I remember watching that when I was a kid. It was like 64 to 68.
Mm-hmm.
That was cool. He was good in that, and you're right. He's done a ton of TV and had recurring roles on a lot of stuff that I know you like. So it's probably, at least Chad. I mean, he did an episode of Wonder Woman. I think he did a few Fall Guys. 3 episodes of Fall Guy. Oh Lord, 7 episodes of Love Boat. 6 episodes of Fantasy Island. He's this kind of that character, isn't he? And so yeah, lots and lots of TV.
And he was offered the role of Mike Brady in the Brady Bunch.
Oh, really?
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he said he turned it down after 4 years of Subs and Monsters, who needs kids and dogs? So.
Wow.
Well, he was really excited about this movie, I guess. When he read the script, he was all fired up to be in it and got irritated when they changed stuff. Like he thought the makeup should be progressive, but they didn't want to take the time and the money to do that, I guess. And I don't know, there was a few other things. I guess he got really mad at the director when the director did some pickup shots and used his own hand to like turn some knobs on the machines instead of letting
him do it.
Letting him do it.
Oh, wow.
So I don't know. I mean, I don't think he was an angry guy. I just think he was very passionate about his work and about doing things the right way. So anyway. Yeah, he's a guy I kind of grew up with in those years. I always knew who he was. And then Patricia Owens, I thought she was incredible. It's almost her movie. I mean,
yeah. It is.
It's her story. I think it's her story more than his. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Her reactions to the different developments in the device and the cat and was it a guinea pig or a hamster, whatever it was they put in there?
It was guinea pig.
Mm-hmm.
And then when he's trying to figure out a solution, and then the way she reacts in the machine shop, you know, when she has to, I thought she was great, incredible.
Yeah. And I really liked how she played in the beginning, because I couldn't really figure out what was going on. Like, what was really going on in her head? And when you think about what had just happened to her, what had been happening over the past month, it was kind of like, okay, that's pretty heavy. But she did a really good job with that. And she seemed to kind of be overwhelmed with emotion, but also kind of clear-headed enough to kind of respect how she wanted her husband to be thought of, or how it would look, or whatever. So I thought she did a really good job.
Yeah.
That's true, because she did almost everything that he wanted her to do throughout the story.
Well, you know what? That's a good point, because one of the things I really liked was how I hate movies where somebody tells somebody, hurry up, it's a matter of life and death, do this. And then they go, what? Why? Why do I do that? What's the matter? What's going to happen? You know? But when he gives her the message to go do this, she knocks 3 times and goes and does it. You know?
Right, but it wasn't like she was just doing it because she was told to do it. It was like she knew to go along with, it's like she was part of
I think
the communication that was happening.
Yeah.
She trusted him. She knew that something was going on and that he was trusting her and they needed to talk. And so she was like, okay, yes. Yeah.
They were like real partners.
Yeah,
definitely.
Right. Yeah. And the note said something like, something's gone terribly wrong. I'm okay, but it's a matter of life or death.
Yes.
And that gets the message across right away. Right. This is critical.
But she didn't panic. She didn't panic when.
Yeah.
She got a little excited when we had some reveals,
Yes.
Well, I can kind of see that.
A little bit.
And I got to tell you, I like this better than the giant ant IV in Empire of the Ants that we watched for 70s.
That was horrible. This is done way better.
Well, it's also too, it's like right in the middle of that. I think that's the head reveal, isn't it?
Yeah.
And then it kind of zooms in on his head and eyes and then switches to that. You kind of get the idea that you're seeing it through the
right.
They direct you to the fly's point of view. She's really good, I think. Well, and you can see her in this shot. There's one in the middle. She's at the press controls, and I think she's trying to figure out. She's trying to work up to it or wonder. It's too bad. She pretty much quit. I know she's been in other things I've seen, but I didn't recognize them. Episode of Perry Mason, episode of Burke's Law, Gunsmoke, Untouchables, X-15. I've seen that, so maybe that's a place I've seen her. But she kind of retired in like 67, 68. Enough of this acting stuff.
Hell to Eternity. David Jansen. She was in that.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah, she's in a lot of movies. A lot of them I've never heard of either, but she had quite a filmography there.
Yeah, she had close to 50 credits, I think. David Henderson was in a show too, like a 1-season show called The Five. That was sort of I think it was sort of an espionage kind of thing. In between Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea and The Fly. But anyway. All right.
Was it Five Fingers it was called?
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. It was only 1 season, I believe.
Yeah, and I can't remember. It's not something I watched regularly, but I know I watched some of them. And since I found it out, I kind of went and looked for it. And then our favorite little kid. You guys remember him? Charles Herbert. He was a little kid in 13 Ghosts.
Oh, that's right.
Oh, wow. I didn't even make that.
Really? Connection. I didn't. Did not see it.
He was great. You know how women are. Oh my God, it's nice.
A couple of times when he walked away too, and he like turned around, and looked at his mom, like
totally
like a kid, totally like a kid.
Yeah, let that. What do you mean you got a special fly? You know you don't want him. Go let that fly out.
Ah, phooey.
Although, Chad, I was good with your whole the thing that they were progressing more and more, like the fly was getting more and more human like, because when we first see the fly, it's just looks like a fly with a white dot on his head.
Yeah.
And I understand that they didn't go into the whole, but it certainly was a lot more at the end of the movie. So I don't know how much longer he would have lasted. And then Kathleen Freeman, who we talked about, who's a great comic relief. She's in a ton of stuff. I think she had over 300 credits. I think she was looked at for the job of the maid or the whatever on the Brady Bunch.
Alice?
Yeah, that she auditioned for that.
Okay.
Huh.
She played, I remember her from Sister Mary from the Blues Brothers.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
She
wow.
from that.
Sister Mary Stigmata.
Yeah. Yeah. Microwave Marge from Gremlins 2 and Dragnet.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm going to watch Gremlins too. Yeah.
But you can
I
see
definitely
even,
recognized her, yeah. But I didn't know from
even in
what.
this
She's been
one,
in
you
so
can
much
see
stuff.
her sort of comic abilities when
Mhm.
Yeah.
the mother freaks out and says, "No, we're catching the flies. We're not swatting them." And she's like, she does.
I used to
little
watch-
spin around and
I used to watch Gomer Pyle a lot, and she played Sergeant Carter's mom on there.
oh,
And yeah.
Gomer Pyle.
Yeah.
And speaking of which, did you know David Hedison never met Vincent Price or Herbert Marshall until the rap party?
Really?
Wow.
They were never in the film at the same time.
Yeah.
That
you're right.
happens. That happens a lot for some people, especially because the shots that he has aren't with them.
Mm-hmm.
But they do such a good. I mean, it's nice that when you don't even think about that kind of stuff when you're watching a good movie, right? You just like,
Yeah.
oh, that's right. They never were in the scene together, but of course they were brothers. Whatever.
All right, so we have some. We kind of, I don't know. The first thing we find out about the fly is the claw reveal, which is in that top picture. And that's, I was looking at my watch. That's like 53 minutes into the movie. So David Edison shows up about 30 minutes in, or Andre, as she's telling the flashback story. And then he's only on there for like 20 minutes in his normal human form.
Yeah.
And maybe 25. And then starts wearing this black cloth over his head so he doesn't scare the crap out of her. And for the most part, keeps his claw, his fly
In his
hand
pocket.
in his pocket.
Mhm.
Yeah. And it starts getting a mind of its own, doesn't it? I thought that was
Mhm.
kind of cool.
Yeah.
So that's why I made a joke about Dr. Strangelove, but you remember how he was always, his arm was always going Heil Hitler, and he was pounding it down, and it almost seemed like that, he's like, or the fly hand was trying to keep him from signaling his wife to activate the press too.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Grabbing his hand. And
Well, I like when they were in the lab when he threw the fly hand into the window or the machine or whatever, just kind of like to get it out of the way so he could write.
Yeah.
Mhm.
That was cool too. If you looked at his writing, his typing, it started getting a little sporadic, like the spaces and stuff.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And then when first time he writes on the chalkboard, it's not too bad. It's not great, but it's not too bad. But by the last time, he can barely write at that point.
And I don't know if they did this on purpose, but I was really attracted to how they use sound for, they had the fly, so you heard the fly buzzing, but it really kind of brought my attention more to the typing. So like when I would hear the typing, I was like, what's happening? And then you would see that that's how he was communicating with her. I just kind of liked that there was something about the use of sound for those things I thought was really interesting.
Well, you can kind of see in the background of these two, the second and third picture here, where after, I think this is after she pulls the cloth off him and she sees his head and she faints, and he carries her over and his claw hand starts to creep up. And I think it has like nefarious thoughts. I don't know if it's hungry or what the thing is, but he kind of freaks out when he sees that. But if you look at the pictures in the background, there's these weird like wiring boards. To me, it kind of looks like the boards that they'll use to make wiring harnesses, or used to. They would have like a board laid out and you'd hang stuff on it. And then we had to have a whole bunch of neon tubes in there too, which is just awesome.
I loved it.
They didn't do anything except
all the
They
colors.
couldn't get a hold of Kenneth Strickfaden for that.
That's right. But it was pretty cool though. I dug that.
I loved
super
it.
bright flash. That was I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking when we were watching, I hope he gets this perfected in time for Star Trek. Sort of like
I was thinking that too.
I think of a few hundred more years. But he calls it disintegrator integrator, I think. There's the disintegrator chamber and the integrator chamber. But anyway, did anybody read the story?
No, I would like to. I appreciate that you sent it out. I would really like to read it.
Well, there's go ahead.
I was just going to say, especially, after watching the movie again, it's like, this is a really, really good story. There's a lot of stuff going on in the story that I really would like to read it.
Yeah. So the story appeared in Playboy in 57, and it like almost immediately got bought up. And, so the story, the only two things that are really different in the story is the second time when she forces him to go through again, even though he doesn't have the fly, he picks up pieces of the cat.
That makes sense.
And he comes out with like a cat-shaped, I think maybe, forehead and ears. And I can't remember. There's some other parts. So he's like, 2/3 human and then part cat and fly in the story, which is really horrifying. And
I really loved what they did with the cat. Just, I felt like they established the cat as a part of the family. And then, so you really felt like what he was doing, when he put the cat in there. And then the fact that the cat disappeared and it was making those sounds kind of out in wherever, that was so disturbing, just listening to those sounds. I felt like those are like horror show sounds, hearing those sounds, and that it was just kind of out there, and you're just thinking like, what is happening with this cat? Clearly it's conscious, it's making these noises, but what's really going on? Like, is it, I don't know. I just was thinking about atoms and stuff like that. And so I just remember thinking, wow, that's pretty intense, them including that in there to kind of highlight kind of him knowing what he did, what was at stake, what he was doing. And I just really appreciated that kind of, that's something I liked about the story a lot, that it really kind of, like you said, nowadays they'd go over, over more with special effects or whatever, but some of the stuff was really intense, like the smashing in the beginning, the cat just kind of howling and disappearing. And I don't know, I just thought it was a really had some kind of modern things in it. I don't really even like saying modern, but it's like things about humans, that have been around all the time, but it's kind of really there out in the open. And I it was cool. It, like what you were saying, Chad, that it's not this kind of B movie. There's definitely fun B-movie horror stuff about it, but there's way more going on than just that.
It's it's the emotions involved in it. The story is that good where you care very much about these people. So when this tragedy starts taking place, you're like, is he going to be able to get out of this? Is he going to be able? And then when he doesn't, you're like crushed because up to that point, you just care so much about them
Mhm.
and that family that
Mhm.
it's just heart wrenching. To me, it
Mhm.
is anyway.
Mhm.
That a movie can draw you in like that.
Mhm.
Not a lot of older movies were
Mhm.
doing that at the time. It was
Mhm.
all put the monster out there, let it kill some people, blah blah blah, and then we destroy it at the end. But you really you really have that character
Mhm.
development in there that's so good.
And I really like, we kind of talked about this a little bit, the partnership between the husband and wife, because it really felt they had excellent chemistry. They clearly were in love with each other. She was totally fine with him, accepted him how he was, knew that she, this was, and she had her life, and they seemed very happy, all of them, just very happy and themselves. And I really like that, because sometimes when you watch some of these movies, it's just, you have like the June Cleaver more depiction. And like you said, it was kind of her story, and he wasn't necessarily, in the best of light. She tolerated things about his character, but they loved each other, and they were equal in their relationship. So that was really, and it wasn't like over the top. It was just, that's how it was. That this was their relationship. I thought that added interesting thing that maybe you wouldn't have noticed, but just added to the realism of the relationship. I thought
they weren't perfect.
Mm-mm.
It wasn't. I think, but they weren't like the sitcoms of that time where everything is spick and span. They had flaws, and just like normal people have flaws, and that was a nice touch.
Well, even towards the end, after what happened to her husband, and when she and Francois and her son are at the end outside, and her son is asking about what happened to his father, and she and Francois are gently putting it to him that he was an explorer, and so he, therefore, like, having that kindness and that care from both of them being said about him, that's something valid for their characters to be that way after all the fiasco that went down.
And I feel like it really added some, like, realistic, that a family, when someone passes away and other people step in to care for, each other, those are the kind of questions that they have to answer.
Yes.
And then they have to rely on each other to help raise this kid or answer these questions. And it just felt, again, it felt like a genuine conversation that they were having, and, that would come up with Philippe, instead of just Philippe disappearing, at the end. It was like, no, we're going to explain, to what happened to this in our family, and we're going to, go on. I mean, how often does that happen? Just with regular characters, let alone a child, so that, you're right, Whitney, that was good.
Yes. And I thought it was realistic too, the scene where when she first finds out there's something wrong, he tells her to go get a bowl of milk and rum. So she goes in the kitchen to get it, but she's like a little bit discombobulated or something.
Yeah.
And a bunch of stuff falls out of the refrigerator on the floor, and then she spills some milk over in the cup or the bowl, and then she leaves, and she's just kind of flustered. And that's when Emma, Kathleen Freeman, comes in. She doesn't say anything. She just comes in and goes and cleans up. Starts cleaning up this stuff. I mean, she even leaves the refrigerator door open.
Yeah.
Right? So,
even though she says for her to go back to bed, she doesn't. She just comes right in and does her thing.
Yep.
Yeah. Exactly. Yes. She knows what to do. Yeah.
Yeah.
So in the story, the only other thing that's different in the story is that Helene kills herself in the story.
Oh.
I think she's in. I think they put her in an institution like right away, and then she kills herself, and she leaves this written, like the flashback part. She leaves it written out.
Wow.
And then they read they read through it and you find out what happened as if it's the story. So yeah, quite a darker turn.
Yeah.
Yeah, no kidding.
So the poor kid lost them both.
Yeah.
Not really having any idea what really
Right.
happened.
So I think that I think it's good choices. I totally understand why they didn't have him combined with the cat. That would have been a whole nother level of effects makeup. Speaking of which, we should show this before we get too far down the line here.
I prefer this one so much more than the next The Fly movie, where it's huge. It looks like a weather balloon or something. This is so much better. Yeah,
I saw it described as a Mardi Gras mask. It's like,
yeah, it's weird.
It's
and in that one, in this one, David Henderson, he said there was no stunt guys. He was always the one. He wore that.
That's cool.
Even between scenes, you could see him. He'd just be sitting. There's outtake pictures on that you can find that show him he's just sitting down somewhere because he couldn't see real good. So he was in it, and he actually. This probably sounds weird, but even with that thing over his head, he's doing a great job acting. I don't know.
Yes.
I mean, you could just see it. So
I love
that
you,
other one.
Sorry, Jeff. I would just say I love that you put the photos on here a little bit easier to see than in the movie, because I love that you can actually like see his skull underneath, and then the little, I don't know if they're hairs or tendrils or what coming out of him. It's just so much creepier than like just this fur kind of. It's really creepy.
Yeah.
Look at it.
I don't know if it's a joke shot or not, but there's a shot of him sitting in like a makeup chair or barber chair, and somebody's there with clippers and a comb, going. Anyway,
it was gross when he ate.
Oh no, that was I cringed hearing all of that.
Oh yeah, and again, all you had to do was hear it, and you were just imagining, going, "Oh my god, what's he doing?"
Because that's covering him. Like he has. That's the thing that when you said like the acting is good on his part, it really is, because it was the sounds, like Daphne said. Because even when that bowl was under, and you could just hear that slurping, and I'm like, I can't stand it.
And the grabbing and tearing of the meat,
the steak.
Oh yeah, I know.
Because he's having to do it with one hand.
And,
It's just savage.
Well, they finally holds it down with the claw and ups it down, I think.
Yeah.
But God, and then so this is great stuff, and it's hard to see. I tried to lighten these up so you could see it a little better, but he's got these weird little, like I don't know what you call them, little
the proboscis in the middle.
And when he's walking around, when he doesn't have the cloth over his head, you see them like
they're like moving around.
It's gross.
It is.
And they're not just like moving around; they're like jerky, like a real fly would be.
Well, I thought it was cool too when he destroys the laboratory. But that was sometimes when somebody does that, it doesn't look realistic. But I thought this looked really realistic for somebody that didn't have total control over, his body.
Like and was fighting himself. He was also fighting himself.
That was.
You're right. Because that could have looked really silly, but he like, and taking all of his notes to burn them up and destroy the machines. It was believable. And you talked a little bit about his that he didn't really change clothes except for when they went to the opera. And I thought that was really cool, that it was like and I was looking at his clothes. It's like he just has that lab coat on, or that, I don't know if it's a lab coat. I don't know, what science wore in those days, but had this coat on in his pants, and it was just very identified him. So it's kind of like when you see his body after you've heard the story, you know who it is now. And then you go back and you see his body, his coat and everything in the little smasher. You're like, yeah, that's definitely him. I mean, that was just part of his.
Yeah. Did you notice when when the cops showed up and they had Francois raise the press, that the body lifted up just a little bit and fell back down?
Oh, I did not notice that.
Oh, look at that. look at that again. I was like, oh my God, I can't believe they did that.
Innocent.
I'm gonna have to watch that again because that's awesome.
Just a little bit, but it does. It's really there. So we always talk about the end scene. So the things that stuck in my head as a kid were, and strangely enough, and this might have been cut. This is an 1.5-hour movie, and I was watching it on a thing that was shoved into an 1.5-hour time slot. So I'm sure they cut stuff, and I think maybe they cut some of the press stuff, like the blood or something to show it 4 o'clock in the afternoon on a kid's time slot. That I don't really remember, but what I remember are his fly head, and then these 2 shots where
Yeah.
it's just
Gnarly
that is
stuff.
like the stuff nightmares is made of.
Totally.
And
So
then
cool.
the best part.
Iconic shot.
Well, this is the one that really got me.
Yeah, same here.
And then his tongue is like sucked up in it. I don't know. You could see his tongue moving. And that is awesome makeup. And I think, go ahead.
The web, like the webbing all over his hair, it's in his hands. I mean, that's stuff that makes you cringe.
And I like how they kind of added to this final scene here where you see this you start thinking, okay, he has a little white spot and it doesn't really draw your attention. And then the further you start realizing, like before you see this, it's like, what is he going to look like when you start realizing that his head is on this body? It's like, it just kind of is like, what am I going to see when you finally see him? And it's just,
the shape he makes with his mouth is horrifying. I don't know.
Yeah, it is.
It doesn't seem human, but
no, not at all. Just the way that he's holding his mouth and his tongue, like you said, and how some of the stuff around his skull. I mean, it's just kind of like it's not super dramatic, but you're definitely like seeing some sort of change or something twisted, about him.
All right. I believe it's not really credited, but not explicitly credited, but in some of the commentary I saw that they said it was a guy named Ben Nye that did the fly hand and head.
Well, he's a makeup guy, isn't he, Whitney?
Right.
Yeah,
right.
It is a makeup
has makeup. I've used some of his makeup like for Halloween or whatever, but
okay.
But I don't know about him, what his actual career was.
Well, he's got over 400 credits in makeup department. So I'll be honest, I didn't take time to look through the whole thing. So he did do some The Boston Strangler, Pretty Poison, which is one a friend of mine keeps telling us we should do. Planet of the Apes, he must have worked on that some. So
yeah.
Valley of the Dolls, let's see, Dr. Doolittle. So there's some Flim Flam Man, so there's some stuff in there that had some, Lost in Space, makeup supervisor, Time Tunnel, Batman,
Yeah. Nice.
Green Hornet, Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea. So I take it all back. He really was, I don't know how much he actually did in like monster movie stuff. But wow. There's just so much, 400 some credits. Wow. Yeah. So they talked about him in the commentary, and David Hedison talked about him, and that he was like, he was all in for the makeup time. He wasn't like trying to, all right. And one other person. Did you see who the cinematographer was? Carl Struss. And we had him in one other movie.
I remember that name. Do
Do you know Daphne, or are you just
No, I
laughing at Chad?
don't. I don't. I'm just laughing at Chad. I'm just like, he's gonna get it.
You're not
He's
gonna. You're probably not gonna think of it. Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde.
Really?
Oh,
Wow.
I'm so mad at myself right now.
We talked about that, and he won an Oscar for Sunrise, which was a F.W. Murnau film in the late 20s. So another reason that to really enjoy this.
Mm-hmm.
All right,
There was
I
some
don't
good
know.
folks in this. Good folks.
They are.
Yeah.
There are, and I'm sure I missed some. Yeah. So, folks, final thoughts? Anything anybody wants to say that they haven't said?
It's so good. That's all I've got to say. It's so good.
Wish it had dog poop in it.
Yeah. Except for that. Yeah. you're
Yeah,
right.
no. doesn't need that.
I'm sure if
It
he'd
is
have asked for it, his wife would have got it
Mhm, yeah.
Ugh.
It's somewhere.
somewhere.
Put that on one of the notes. Go out in the yard and get me some dog poop. Next thing you hear is that slurping sound from behind the door.
Yeah,
All right, stop.
if people can't stand certain sounds, I wouldn't recommend it. Like if you hate like slurping sounds,
Mhm.
eating sounds, I
What?
wouldn't recommend to those people. But
Yeah.
I actually thought the science explanation, we talked about that a little bit. It wasn't too sciencey, but it
Mm-mm.
made sense. It's
Mhm.
like, hey, it's like a camera is a disintegrator for the picture, and the TV is the integrator,
Mhm.
you know,
Yeah.
and they're sending electronic particles through the air. So hey,
Right. And everything's just atoms, and you just break them down. Yeah.
and there's lots of space
Mhm.
between
It makes sense. Yeah, this is one of the classic monster movies of all time, and it should be right up there with the classics, because it really is a well-made film, well written, great actors, and some really horrific stuff in it for the time, I thought,
yeah,
and concepts and stuff. So
Well, so, and what is it? Return of the Fly, yeah, not so good. And in fact, in Return of the Fly,
speaking
had
of dog
a-
poop,
There you go.
they had a stunt person playing the Fly, and he was a big tall guy, and then had this super oversized head that he couldn't hardly even fit inside the teleporting chamber. Anyway, but Curse of the Fly is kind of interesting, and that one has Brian Donlevy and some creepy stuff that happens when two people are in the transporter at once.
Mhm.
we'll cover it.
Kind of advanced for the time. All right. Well, that's it for this one. But we do have some feedback quickly. Number 132 for Son of Dracula. Scott Wells commented. And Daphne, could you take that one?
Sure. Let me move it over here so I can see a little better. Okay. Scott Wells. Great episode. I have a checkered history with this one. I really hated it when I first watched it years ago, but with each rewatch, I like it more. I don't think it will ever be among my favorite Dracula movies, but it might be up there in terms of vampire films. I love the fact that the real villain seems to be Kay, who is planning a double cross of Dracula, which is not something you often see. I agree.
Yep.
Yeah, it's very true.
It is.
The weakest part of the film, and what keeps it from greatness, is unfortunately Chaney's line delivery. His performance is fine and even chilling, but the lines seem strange coming out of his mouth. He never found the voice of the character, which is a pity, because there is some good dialogue in Son of Dracula that might have been very effective given to another actor. Chaney seems most effective playing characters that have a certain pathos to them, and while Dracula can work like that, it's not the way he's written in this film. I wonder what Kurt Siodmak could have done with it if his brother hadn't fired him.
Yeah.
Mhm.
We didn't really talk about that, but yeah, he
Yeah.
wrote the story and then someone else did the screenplay.
Speaking of Kurt Siodmak, I read an interview with him where he spoke a bit about this film. There seemed to be a sort of resigned bitterness about Robert firing him, but then he went on to an almost gleeful anecdote about how Chaney smashed a vase over Robert Siodmak's head during the filming of Son of Dracula. Apparently, Chaney would often show up drunk and Robert couldn't control him, and one of those times resulted in that incident. I wonder about this because Chaney's performance is far more restrained here than a lot of his other films. He doesn't seem drunk. He seems to be really controlled. I love the scene in particular when Frank shoots Alucard and incidentally Kay, just for the way Chaney plays it. He doesn't move a muscle. He doesn't flinch. He shows no reaction whatsoever to either being shot or to Kay apparently being killed. He just keeps staring at Frank. And even as Frank moves away, all he does is slowly turn just his head to watch Frank with an absolutely malevolent, icy stare. It's beautiful. This is one of those films I could talk about for hours, so I had better stop now. Just a couple more suggestions for the classic era. The Flesh Eaters, 1964. The Japanese film The Snake Girl and the Silver-Haired Witch, 1968. The Island of Terror, 1966. Island of the Burning Damned, 1967. And Curse of the Crimson Altar, 1968. Join my previous suggestion of The Return of Dracula, 1958, and I Bury the Living, 1958. Great show, folks.
Oh man.
Oh,
Thanks, Scott.
Thanks, Scott.
Yeah, thank you, Scott. Good,
Those are
good,
great.
good insights.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I know, those are good observations too.
Uh-huh.
He's right about that scene. And I have read a lot of stories about Chaney just sitting in finding somebody else on the set that he would just sit and drink with and sometimes would just like trash everything. He had some demons, let's put it that way.
Yeah.
But anyway, I couldn't see it in the movie. All righty. Now we have one for episode 131, The Skeleton of Mrs. Morales. Whitney, you want to take that?
sure.
From Michael Mohr.
Bravo. I can see why this movie is rated so high on the list of whatever or whatever. All right. About 99% of the films you review, I have seen before. It is a pleasure to be introduced to films that did not get their due. This one, I had to watch it a second time because the details are so... Can someone help me with that word? I don't want to make a mistake. Succinct. Okay. And creepy. Bags of fertilizer, and I love the ending. Great recommendation. Well,
Such a good
thanks.
movie.
Excellent.
Yes.
So good.
Yeah, he's talking about, I think, there was some group of Mexican filmmakers that voted, and this was like 19th or 20th or something, and the top 100 printed in some magazine. All right. Okay, folks, that's it for today. Great fun talking about this. I appreciate it.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, it's
And
awesome.
Running long. That's it for this episode, but every 2 weeks we'll be focusing on a specific film released between 1920 and 1969. Next up, chosen by Daphne. What are we watching, Daphne?
Diabolique, 1955. And I can't pronounce the director.
Oh, shoot. I was hoping you would.
Henri Georges Clouzot. Clouzot. Thanks, Fly Guy. Henri Georges Clouzot.
Very interesting movie. So we'll be checking that one out next. So be sure to subscribe, like, recommend, share, leave comments. We love comments. We know you guys know what you're doing and you've watched a lot of these movies. So let us know what we missed or your own take or what we got wrong, and suggestions. Just remember, we only do one every 2 weeks. So It may be a while, but we do keep them in mind. Plenty of ways to stay in touch. So you can send feedback to feedback@gruesomemagazine.com. You can also make comments on the YouTube channel or on the Facebook channel group, Gruesome Magazine's HNR and DOH podcast Facebook group, and on our website, gruesomemagazine.com. And just in case, if you're not listening to the other podcasts, Horror News Radio is back. So we have a weekly, about 30-minute recap of horror news for the week. So check that out on the Gruesome channel or on your podcast apps. Catch us again here in 2 weeks for another great horror movie of the classic era, as only decades of horror can do it. Say goodnight.
Good night.